no longer be unpopular. They have to solve this problem that way. If they don't do anything to give money to provide budget for the computerization of DepEd and for PhilHealth, then the people will continue to protest.
Okay, I see where you're coming from, Justice Carpio. Okay, so basically your point here is that it's not like malakas yung pro-Sara forces and there's enough nuancing and all uh, to argue that things are changing in Duterte's favor. But nevertheless, BBM still has to do his part, which is
Yeah,
ayusin yung gulo na to sa budget. Okay, I get
he
it.
can still save the situation.
Get ko yan. Gets ko yan. Again, I appreciate this perspective, Justice, because it's quite different from some of the other perspectives we're hearing. But this is good. This is very important. The next thing I want to ask Justice Carpi here is Matabato. Finally, it looks like he's in a place of safety. Bakit it took so long for him? Because Las Cañas has been a witness for the ICC for quite some time. Is it because Las Cañas can speak English and is a well-versed professional, I don't know, policeman or whatsoever? Why it took years for Matabato, who could have been killed any moment throughout the years, to get that passport, to get out of the country, to get the anonymity, to get out of the country? Why it took so long for the ICC? And now that he's more or less within the custody of the ICC, we're not going to reveal his exact location. Does that mean that the final piece of the puzzle could come together?
Well, first of all, the reason why it's only now, because they could not bring him out of the country. It was difficult to spirit him out of the country. It's only when President Marcos Jr. became president that they decided to bring him out. I think it was too risky to bring him out. So, of course, once he's out, he could be interviewed by the ICC prosecutors, and they accepted him. So he's now under the protection of the ICC. No, that's why. Because that's the reason why it's only now, because he could not go there.
Important is the testimony of Oscar of Matabato, because I mean he saw things firsthand, because Las Cañas was like the consigliere, I was a lieutenant, right? But Matabato was the henchman, right? He was the guy on the ground overseeing the operations, horrible operations, including cannibalist activities to create a sense of solidarity, no? Dun sa quarry where all of the bodies were buried. I mean, if some of you don't have time to read Patricia Evangelista's whole book, then at least read the Hannah Beach's pieces on New York Times about about Matabatos. Justice Carby, what is your read of how important his testimony to the ICC could be? Could this be the culmination of the evidence gathering portion of the ICC investigation?
Well, I understand that there is one more police officer in the custody of the ICC. I think there are at least 3 of them. Not only Las Cañas, but also not only Matabato and Las Cañas, but another one. And we don't know who that is. But I think they have enough witnesses to pin down Duterte. But I don't know why it's taking them time to issue the warrant of arrest. No.
Is it because hindi cooperative yung Philippine government?
Well, they did not expect the Philippine government really to cooperate. And there are a lot of admissions by the president and by Duterte himself. He said, I was the one. He even, before the Quadcom, he said he killed drug addicts, he killed criminals. I mean, so all of those extrajudicial confessions are admissible in evidence.
Now we had this discussion about Duterte essentially incriminating himself, diba? In that very self-indulgent Senate.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be used against him. I'm sure of that. They have all of this video interviews of him.
So you think we're reaching the moment of truth? Again, I know we don't want to get into trouble because last year we were talking about September.
Yeah, I think everything is in place. It's up to the ICC now whether to issue the warrant of arrest or not. And then there will be a problem because unless the ICC has physical custody of Duterte, the trial will not proceed. So it will now be President Marcos Jr.'s call whether to turn him over or not. If he turns him over, then he gets rid of his problem.
Well, I'm looking at the situation in South Korea. Medyo nahirapan yata yung South Korean police to arrest former President Kim Jong-un. Sorry, President Yoon. I call him Kim Jong-un. Do you think that should be worrying? Or dahil meron tayong General Torre, yun yung wala sa Korea. They have a Kiboloy catcher. They don't have a Kiboloy catcher like us. Do you think General Torre could be the guy to arrest Duterte once the arrest comes out? Are we in a better position to get things through?
Yes, I think because the PBBM is the president and he can order. And there is this law, the Philippine International Humanitarian Law, which says even if you're not a member of ICC, the president can decide whether to prosecute the accused here or to turn him over to an international tribunal. He has the authority under the law to do that.
And do you think eventually Marcos will move in that direction? Because he went from totally towing the Duterte line to saying he's open, and then eventually Bersamin, your former colleague in the Supreme Court, saying that the Philippines will cooperate, and DOJ Secretary saying wala
Well,
tayong choice. Do you think that's the arc here?
I think he will, especially if Sara is included as in the warrant of arrest. Because remember, you remember what Sara said. He dreamt of cutting the head. So
Beheading.
beheading.
Medyo ISIS style
There's
yun.
a ground to turn her over.
And you think Sara is out of the woods when it comes to impeachment because there was supposed to be a fourth impeachment in the mix. Some are saying after elections na lang. I mean, I had Senator Trillanes on the show saying maybe after elections na lang. Isn't that too late for an impeachment?
Well, the problem is they may not have time because after the election, they only have 1 month to meet, and it's less than a month to meet. And I don't think they will have the time to finish the trial. So I think the solution there is really just to file a plunder case because there will be a
Yun
new
na lang.
ombudsman by August. So that the fallback, and I think that's what eventually will happen. They will just file the plunder case.
And what about the sedition with Duterte saying fractured government, military has to come in, with Sara Duterte threatening the president, grave threats? What about those criminal charges?
Well, the against Duterte, the that's a difficult. There's an easier way to do it by filing the plunder case because sedition, that's very tricky. You have to uh, show that there was a seditious act.
Yeah, na
And
may mga nag-coordinate, cooperate
oh
from
yeah,
military, service. Yeah,
mahirap
yeah. You
yun.
have to have the
Kasi
chain of, yeah, yeah.
yeah, your defense there is freedom of expression. So it's easier because you have 121 million that was paid to non-existent persons.
Right. So what you're saying essentially, just Scarp, is that impeachment medyo malabo, especially after our elections, but the plunder one seems to be the most feasible and viable options to pin down the Dutertes for good in terms of accountability. Because mas mahirap i-prove yung sedition and all of the other charges. Because the
Yeah,
chain of evidence you need to establish is
yeah.
extremely difficult. Now, let's go to the last part of our discussion, Justice Carpio. So just in a week or so, Donald Trump is gonna take over, the greatest president. And according to the greatest president in the universe, 51st state na daw in Canada. Nakalimutan na tayong Pilipinas. And he wants to take over Greenland. I've been in Greenland, and the people in Greenland don't like Denmark. And I know a lot of them want to join the US, but what do you make out of Trump openly threatening to take over Panama Canal, Greenland? he didn't rule out economic or even military measures to even get Canada. Isn't that bad in a sense that isn't that the wrong signal to China and Russia na parang kung malaking power ka, it's the rule of the jungle?
Well, he's actually emulating Putin. So how can we now hold Putin to account when the US itself is doing the very act, the same act that Putin did? And uh, and Greenland, what on earth has has Greenland done to offend the US? Wala naman ginawa eh. And the Dutch are very
They're the
friendly to the US.
Danish, yeah, the Danes, their fellow Viking NATO member. I'm kawawa in Denmark, naawa ako sa Denmark. How bad this Justice Carpi for the rules-based international order? Because
Very bad.
very bad, right?
Because yeah, because we are against the Russian invasion of Ukraine because the UN Charter expressly outlaws the use of force or the threat of force to settle a dispute. The US has a dispute with Panama over use of the Panama Canal. You cannot use force because China will use force against us. And we cannot complain anymore. We can. China will say, "Oh, look, the U.S. is doing that to Panama. How can we invoke international law?"
And how can you respect the US saying rules-based order and standing with us on
Yeah,
international?
wala na. That's they're throwing away out of the window their adherence to the rule of law. They they're, they are just like Russia now. If they do that to Panama and to Greenland, they are exactly like Russia.
At least in Canada, sabi nila, just to be clear, we Canadians define ourselves as not being American, right? So the last thing we want is to be part of the United States. Okay, what if just ito na lang, Justice, for the sake of argument, marami tayong mga followers na pro-Trump. As you may know, there are more pro-Trump Filipinos than pro-Trump Filipino Americans, right? So it just tells the level of political consciousness sa ating bansa. But ang argument nila, Richard, you don't understand the genius of Donald Trump. He's just out of the deal. He's just trying to do intimidation. What is your read of that, Justice Garvey? Maybe we're just being too liberal and hater. Does rhetoric alone set a dangerous precedence, even if Trump doesn't act on his rhetoric?
Yeah, because the Chinese will say, well, U.S. president is saying that he can invade Panama. Why can't we do it to the Philippines? Why can't Russia do it to Ukraine?
Or to
So
Taiwan in the case of China, yeah.
yeah, so the U.S. now will lose its moral high ground. It cannot preach to the world, Russia, you cannot invade another country because the U.S. president is saying we can do it also. I mean, uh, even if it's just a statement and it will not be followed through, it's going to hurt the image of the US and it's going to embolden China and Russia and other countries.
That's what I'm saying. Even if it's just like a tactical art of the deal
Mm.
posturing, it's not sending the right signal, right? It's sending the opposite. Kasi sinasabi ng iba, no, this is just Donald Trump's art of the deal. Di niya naintindihan yung genius ni Donald Trump. No, he's not a genius. He just he's just a bully and at the top of the most powerful country. It's so easy to bully everyone else when you're the president of the United States. There's nothing genius about that. If anything, it's the opposite. It's actually foolish. And it makes a joke out of the rules-based international order. Which brings me to the final part of our discussion, Justice Carpio. So what is the implication for the Philippines? Are you now even more worried about what a Donald Trump 2.0 could mean for the Philippines? And what the heck should we do to protect our own interests in the West Philippine Sea para siguraduhin natin na hindi lang tayo tuta ng Amerika or we're not just part of the menu if Trump and China cut a grand bargain?
Well, I've always said that we have to strengthen our own defenses because at the end of the day, we may not be able to rely on any other country. And I was thinking that, the US has a history of isolationism twice before World War I and before World War II, and they could do it again. And I thought that this would happen years from now, but it could happen anytime now because of Trump. And for Trump to say that we cannot blame Russia for invading Ukraine, tomorrow he might say we cannot blame China for invading the Spratlys. I
Or
mean,
Taiwan.
or Taiwan.
Yeah.
Well, Taiwan is well armed, but not
We are not.
we're not well armed. So we are the low hanging fruit.
We are the very available fruit there. Justice Garbio, there's this line narrative in the Duterte camp that Sara Duterte was invited to the inauguration of Trump, that Trump loves the Dutertes, and that Trump hates BBM because BBM is too tough Biden. What is your read of that? Kasi siguro ang basa ko, ano, Justice, yung open invite lang doon sa field, sa may Lincoln, para lang mapuno yung drone shot. Baka doon na-invite si Sara Duterte, hindi doon sa heads of state. And then they made a big show out of it. What do you read into this whole Duterte saying, congratulations to my pal, and then like all of these pro-Duterte saying, Trump will save me because he hates, like liberal internationalists like BBM and Biden. Like, what is your read into that whole chutzpah?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's correct. Factually, I don't think Sarah was invited because they announced that they will not
Oh,
be
doon lang sa may
inviting
hot dog
anyone.
stands doon sa lawan sa Lincoln Park.
So, well, I don't know why they're using that, but wala na silang talagang ibang magamit, no? Because
It's trying to hold on to anything they
yeah,
di ba?
hindi nga kinumbida yung best friend niya si Putin eh.
Nampake sa kanila. I mean, why don't they get it, Justice? Like, Trump doesn't care about losers. If you're not in power, you don't count, right? So I just don't understand this fixation of the pro-Duterte camp na kasama daw sila sa Populist International, na Duterte will rescue them. Grabe, parang ito yung QAnon ng Philippines, no? May version din tayo ng ganon. Hindi daw invited si BBM. What should BBM do with Duterte? Aside from, I don't know, making Imelda Marcos talk to Trump. I don't know how lucid she is, but I don't know. Talk about Studio 54 days and like whatever.
Well, they did the right thing by removing her from the National Security Council.
Asad, what is the relevance of taking out Sara from the executive committee and Digong from the broader circle of National Security Council? Was that a signal to say, malapit na tayo mag-negotiate with the Trump people? We don't. Is this their way of saying baka malik yung minutes namin sa China? Do you think that's?
Well, why will you entrust the secrets of the nation to somebody who dreams of cutting your head? I mean, for me, it's totally reasonable to remove her because of what she said.
And leakage, right? You think
Yeah.
there's legitimate fear na
Well, the
malik?
linkage. And in other words, here is a person who wants you killed and who announced it to the public. So why will you
Joke
put
naman, no joke na joke. Ay, hindi ko alam how does it work in the Duterte. Conditional threat naman daw. As long as buhay pa naman si Sara, buhay din naman.
but still a threat?
So, Justice Garvey, are you concerned that magkuplot tong mga walang mga walang yan. Mga Duterte na yan. Do you think they are in a position ever to launch a coup d'etat or something? RevGov?
Well, I don't think they're in a position because I don't think the military will follow an ex-president. I think they've been drilled enough to follow the chain of command, and the highest person there is the president, the commander-in-chief, the incumbent. Their loyalty is to the incumbent, not to the past president.
Unless you're also an ex-general na irrelevant. You're,
Well,
yeah, sabi ko, people come down, hindi naman military mga retired na to eh. Hindi naman relevant to mga retired generals. So wala nang influence mga yan. Justice, on a parting point here, so what is your advice? What should BBM do, again for recap, what should BBM do in the next week or two? And what should the genuine opposition do in a week or two also to make sure na hindi sasakyan ng mga DDS itong whole budget scandal controversy issue na yan? Kasi talagang ginagamit na lang issue na to. At least I'm glad you're seeing that, Justice Carr, because I've been warning about this for quite some time.
well, first on the side of the government, the president should ask Congress to pass a supplemental budget for DepEd and for PhilHealth, and that will quiet down a lot of people. And on the part of the opposition, they should say that we have filed cases against Sara in the confidential fund. We will support the impeachment, but we're also against this budget. I mean, we're not just because we're against this budget doesn't make us pro Sara anymore. I mean, it doesn't follow.
Yeah, and I think tama yung ginawa ni Tanyada, no, ni Congressman Tanyada, to call out also Duterte's when they try to make drama out of the National Security Council purge, to say, we, kayo rin, di ba? Tinanggal nyo rin si Robredo sa National Security Council. Dapat ganun eh. Tama yung ginawa ni Tanyada eh. Dapat every time ito mga Duterte, ito mga to, ay sumasakay dito sa mga issue na ito, you call them out and say, wala kayong karapatan, wala kayong moral integrity, wala kayong moral capital ascendancy to talk about these issues, including sa issue ng corruption. Not to mention the extrajudicial killings, among other things. Justice Carpio, would I be right to say, or maybe disagree, that the Duterte still remain as the number one threat to constitutional democracy in the Philippines? Not to mention our territorial integrity in the West Philippine Sea. That for all the foibles and faults of BBM, for everything legitimate we can say about the budget of Marcos Jr., that still the fundamental threat to our constitutional democracy are the Dutertes.
Well, not primarily, because I think the number one threat to our constitutional democracy is if President Marcos Jr. fails miserably, and the the people will want a RevGov, and the Dutertes will not necessarily be on top, but could fan the flames of a RevGov, could be supporting character, because of course the RevGov Council will not choose Duterte because they know he's passed, but gagatungan nila. No, I don't think that they are in a position to change, to topple the president, the incumbent. But if by chance something happens to the president, like he dies, automatically it becomes Sara. That will be the only situation where I can see the Duterte's coming back.
Okay, let me rephrase that because I'm very disappointed with your answer, Justice Carville. Like wait. I invited you to support my argument. I'm just kidding. Ganito na lang. Is it far worse if Sara Duterte were the president right now or to come back to power compared to BBM? Are the Dutertes the greater evil? Okay, let me put it that way. Is that a better way of putting the question?
Well, as of now, yes, they would be the greater evil, taking into account their track record of killing over 30,000 Filipinos. But I think they're not in a position to take over except by constitutional succession,
So
not
essentially,
by
yeah.
force.
So essentially, just to be clear, dun sa mga haters ko, Justice Carpio is saying, morally speaking, worse ang Dutertes, but functionally and operationally, they're not as powerful to be a direct threat to come into power soon. Is that what you're saying, Justice Carpio?
Yes, they cannot mount a coup d'etat, but there can be an occasion that Sara will become president if Bongbong Marcos dies. In that sense, they are still a threat.
Heartbeat away, yeah.
Heartbeat away.
Yeah, I think I got enough from out of this interview, Justice Carpio, kasi dami naman nagagalit sa akin. Ito na naman si Darian. Pero diba, I'm just saying to people, I mean, of course, di tayo fan ni BBM. Maraming problema talaga mga Marcoses, dictatorship, human rights, ganon. I'm just saying, ingat lang talaga tayo kasi ginagamit ng mga Duterte itong mga budget scandal nito. But actually, I agree with you, Justice Carpio. I think the power of the Dutertes is inflated. They are very good in exaggerating their own non-existent influence. Pababa yung approval ratings in Sara. She only has, what, 22% net approval rating. 20% down in Visayas, 13% down in Mindanao. None of them bothered to run for Senate because their numbers are almost pathetic. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to exaggerate the power of the Dutertes. I'm just saying here that, let's not forget the big picture. That if there's one thing worse than corruption, Justice Carpio, is mass killing of Filipino people, right? I think we can agree on that.
Yeah,
Killing
of
Filipinos is
course,
worse
yes.
than corrupting their national budget, right?
Yeah,
Yung
the
kaban ng
worst
bayan.
thing you can do, the worst thing that a leader can do is to kill his own people.
And we know who has done more of that than any other Filipino president, right? So I think that should settle the discussion. On that note, thank you very much, Justice Carpio. Looking forward to hopefully kung imbitado pa rin kami ni Sir Ronald. Nag-behave naman kami last time in your place. If you're open to it, hopefully we can catch up before the end of the year. We can have in person because people really love our dynamic in person. And of course, Justice Carpio, if there's anything that you think we have to, is there anything in particular that you want us to focus on? Ano bang, is there a Supreme Court ruling that people have to watch out for in the coming days or weeks?
Well, we hope that the Supreme Court will decide the confidential fund issue because that's already ripe for decision, and it's really needed to put clarity to this issue.
On that note, thank you very much, Justice Carpio. Mabuhay ka, and hopefully, God willing, see you soon in person. Happy New Year and a blessed one to you and your loved ones. Salamat, Justice Carpio.
Thank you again, Richard, for inviting me, and thank you to our viewers.
Salamat. And Justice, you're always free to agree with me and say I have the greatest arguments in the Philippines. Salamat, Justice Carpio.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
God bless.